He built an empire, dominated the Bodunrin real estate market, and amassed a fortune that many could only dream of. Adaeze Nwosu, a beggar who wandered the streets, lost in the wreckage of a tragedy. Nothing else is what it seems, and destiny has ways of changing the course of history. Get ready for a journey of surprises, twists, and intense emotions. You are ready. The sun rises over Bodunrin, painting the modern buildings with golden hues and reflecting the hustle and bustle of the awakening city. Cars were already filling the streets. Street vendors were shouting their offers, and the first workers of the day were rushing to their appointments. At the center of that movement, imposing and shining, stood the Okafor Towers, a glass skyscraper that symbolized power and influence. At the top of that building, inside a luxurious penthouse that seemed to touch the sky, Chika Okafor started another day. But this time, something worried him in a way that no business meeting or million-dollar contract could alleviate. For years, he had dedicated himself to building his empire. From a young age, I knew that success would not come without sacrifices, and I was willing to pay any price to reach the top. Graduated from the best universities, trained by the best strategists, and with a keen eye for investments, he not only became a billionaire, but one of the most influential men in the real estate sector in all of Nigeria. His ventures were not just buildings. They were status symbols, destinations coveted by tycoons and socialites. His name graced the covers of business magazines, and investors from all over the world vied for his attention. But inside that top-floor penthouse, Chika faced a problem that no amount of money could solve. Since he was little, he grew up listening to his father repeat the same words. True leadership is not just in numbers, but in the ability to build a solid family legacy. For the Okafors, business success was just one of the pillars of greatness. The other was the family, and for a man that meant one thing: marriage. Obinna, a man of strict principles and traditional values, believed that a true leader needed a wife by his side, someone who would not only bear him heirs, but also bring stability, respect, and an image of responsibility to the business world. In his view, a man without a family was an incomplete man. And this belief was not just a personal thought. In the corporate world, where alliances were forged at dinners and fortunes were sealed at weddings, a single man without serious commitment was seen as someone flighty and rootless, incapable of guaranteeing the company's future. Chika always disregarded these ideas. For him, marriage was an unnecessary distraction. He didn't see the point in joining his life to someone else's as a mere formality. If I needed to establish a business partnership, I would make contracts. If he wanted company, there were many women willing to be part of his life, even if for a limited time. The young millionaire always had control of everything. His mother, Ifeoma Okafor, shared the same vision as her husband, but in an even more subtle and observant way. A sophisticated woman, with calculated gestures and engaging speech, Ifeoma never approved of her son's lifestyle. She always thought he was brilliant in business, but childish in love. Chika bounced from one relationship to another, as if all women were disposable. And this attitude not only put the family's reputation at risk, but also proved that he was not ready for the role of absolute leader of Okafor Holdings. "You can dominate this city, my son, but you cannot deceive tradition," she used to say, with a sharp look that made even the most powerful men hesitate. Now tradition took its toll. Obinna and Ifeoma had called the Filgo once again to give an ultimatum. If Chika wanted to take full control of the Okafor company, he would have to introduce a girlfriend to the family, and the deadline would be a gala dinner that would take place in just 1 week, an event that would bring together the most influential families in the country, where his father would make the official announcement of the company's successor. If by then he did not have a fiancée by his side, Obinna would hand over the presidency to one of his ambitious cousins, who had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. At first, Chika laughed at the idea. It seemed ridiculous that after everything he had achieved, his future could depend on something as trivial as a sham marriage. But as the days passed, he realized that his parents weren't bluffing. The movement at Okafor Holdings headquarters had already changed. His cousins, always on the sidelines of major decisions, now roamed the corridors with more freedom than they should have. Executives who previously reported directly to Chika now seemed inclined to report to the board of directors. Even important meetings began to take place without his presence. Chika saw his rivals acting behind the scenes, waiting for the slightest mistake to take what he took years to build. And that time, the mistake wasn't a risky contract. It was the lack of a suitor, Cheeky tried to argue, tried to find loopholes in his parents' decision, but nothing worked. His father was unyielding. If you wanted to stay on top, you needed to follow tradition. The pressure increased every day. He considered several options. He could hire an actress to pretend to be his wife. He could choose any of the women who had ever been in his life and convince her to accept the role. But all these ideas seemed weak, too easy to debunk. If anyone found out it was a scam, not only would they lose the company, but also their credibility. Time was running out and Chike Okafor found himself with no way out. Wait, before continuing, answer me one thing. You've come this far, which means you're a lover of good stories, right? So imagine how many other impactful plots you can discover if you subscribe to this channel now. Here, each video is a journey full of emotion, twists and endings that will surprise you. By activating the bell, you will always be the first to know when a new story is released. So don't waste time. Click on the sign up button now and come be part of this community that loves good stories. The rain fell mercilessly, transforming the streets of Bodenrin into a cold and merciless scene. Far from the luxury of the Okafor family was Adaeze, a beggar who lived on the street. She hugged her body, feeling the thin fabric of her soaked blouse sticking to her skin. The biting wind made the cold even more cruel. What bothered her most was not the temperature but hunger, a constant presence that was eating her up inside. His bare feet were covered in mud, and his stomach tightened with each unsteady step he took along the wet sidewalks. The young woman walked aimlessly, avoiding the disgusted looks of the people who hurried past under their umbrellas. I didn't need words to understand what they were thinking. The same scene was repeated every day, looks that ranged from contempt to indifference, as if she were just another unpleasant detail in the city that no one wanted to see. The smell of hot food coming from the restaurants made her close her eyes for a moment, trying to ignore the emptiness in her stomach. But that night, unlike the others, something inside her broke. Maybe it was tiredness, maybe it was the pain of spending. Another day not knowing when I would eat again, or anger at destiny, at life, at herself for having believed in the promises of her former husband that she coldly deceived. She stopped in front of a luxurious restaurant. Through the large glass window, he saw couples smiling, glasses being raised and finely decorated dishes being served. The aroma was almost torturous. His eyes fixed on a plate that had recently arrived at the table of a man who, distracted in conversation, didn't even notice. The food in front of him. A single bite of that dish could satisfy her for a whole day. His heart hammered inside his chest as he made the decision. She took a deep breath and pushed the door open, feeling the warmth of the room envelop her. The lighting was soft. The instrumental music in the background created an elegant atmosphere, but the sound of conversations dissipated the instant people noticed his presence. Adaeze felt the gazes weighing on her, like invisible blades cutting into her skin. The manager, a man, frowned as he saw her approach. "Lord, please." His voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. "Anything. If I have any leftovers, I'll pay for them when I can." The manager raised an eyebrow, surprised by her boldness, but his expression soon turned to impatience. "This is not a shelter," he said dryly, "and it's certainly not a place for people like you." Ada felt her blood boil. He clenched his fists, swallowing the humiliation. "I'm not asking for money, just a plate of food." "And I'm telling you to leave," replied the manager, gesturing to two security guards who were near the entrance. The men stepped forward, ready to drag her out, but before they could touch her, a firm, male voice echoed through the restaurant. "Leave her. I can help her." Silence took over the place. Ada felt her heart quicken as she turned her face to the table where the voice had come from. A well-dressed man, with a calculating look, held a glass of wine between his fingers as he watched her. With a mix of curiosity and interest, Chike Okafor. The name came to his mind before he could even think about it. He had already read about him in the newspapers, seen his face in articles about big business. He was one of the most influential men in the country, owner of a billion-dollar empire, and now he was looking at her as if trying to decipher a riddle. The manager was visibly disconcerted. "Mr. Okafor, this woman should not—" Chike raised his hand, interrupting him. "I said leave her." The manager hesitated, but nodded quickly and walked away, muttering something inaudible. The security guards returned to their seats. Ada remained still processing what had just happened. "Come," Chike said, pointing to the chair in front of him. She hesitated for a moment. Her instinct screamed not to trust anyone, much less a man like him. but his stomach growled in protest, and in that moment, his need spoke louder than any pride. He slowly walked to the table and sat down. A waitress appeared, still surprised by the scene but professional enough not to question it. "Bring her a plate," ordered Chica. Ada kept her eyes on the man in front of her, trying to understand his intentions. He didn't seem like a man driven by charity. His gaze was intense, analytical, as if he were studying her every move. The dish arrived. The smell of hot food made her mouth water, but she hesitated before reaching for the cutlery. Years ago, dinners like this were part of his routine. Now that meal seemed like an unattainable luxury. "No need to wait for an invitation," said Chica. Ada lifted her chin, as if trying to regain a fragment of lost dignity, and picked up her fork. He took the first bite to his mouth, feeling the rich flavor of the seasoning spread across his tongue. The warmth of the food in his empty stomach brought a feeling he hadn't felt in a long time: comfort. "You seem to have a lot of courage," Cheeky commented, pouring himself more wine. Ada stopped chewing and looked at him. "It's not courage, it's necessity." Chike smirked, leaning forward a little. "So tell me, how did a woman like you end up here?" She frowned. Ada felt a chill run down her spine, but he didn't look away. She didn't know it yet, but that dinner would be the beginning of something much bigger, and that would change her destiny forever. Cheek asked for more food to be brought as he watched her devour the plate, her hunger speaking louder than any pride. Each bite was quick and urgent, as if she feared that at any moment someone might snatch the meal from her hands. But at the same time, there was a subtle care in her posture, a remnant of someone once accustomed to fine cutlery and fine dining. He noticed this when Ada took the napkin and wiped her lips almost automatically, a gesture that would go unnoticed by anyone else but not by him. The silence between the two was broken only by the sound of the cutlery against the plate. Chica was not a man accustomed to long, aimless conversations, but something about that woman aroused his curiosity. There was something beyond the disheveled appearance and the smell of the street that still surrounded her. "You are not an ordinary woman," he commented, taking a sip of the red wine in front of him. Ada paused for a moment, her gaze narrowing slightly. She remained silent, saying that she was just a woman who lives on the streets with no prospects. But Cheeky had a snap at that moment, an idea that seemed crazy, but there was no other option. That would be an ideal solution to the problems that had been tormenting him in recent days. He rested his elbows on the table and looked at her with a serious look. "What if I told you I had a proposal for you?" Ada frowned. "What type of proposal?" Cheeky paused dramatically before speaking. "How much do you want to pretend to be my wife for one night?" Ada stopped chewing. The fork was suspended in the air. He blinked, trying to process the words. "What?" "You heard me," he said calmly, as if discussing a business contract. "I need you to pretend to be my wife for one night." She set her fork down slowly on her plate and leaned forward. "This has to be a joke." But Cheeky wasn't smiling. His look was serious. "I'm not kidding," he continued. "I explain everything. My parents expect me to take a wife to the gala dinner that will take place in a few days. If I don't do this, I could lose control of my company. I need someone to help me keep up this charade." Ada stared at him for long seconds. "And do you think I'm the ideal person for this?" "I think you could be the solution I need," Cheek replied without hesitation. She crossed her arms, assessing him. "And how much exactly is this lie worth to you?" Cheek took a napkin and wiped the corners of his mouth before speaking. 5 million naira. Ada swallowed. 5 million. It was enough money to change his life, to rent a decent place, buy clothes, maybe even find a way back to the career he lost. But at the same time, what exactly did that mean? Would it be bought? Sold? His fingers clenched the thin fabric of her worn dress. "What if I say no?" she challenged him. Chike smiled sideways, a smile full of certainty. "So you go back to the streets, and I go back to looking for another woman." The silence between them prolonged. The surrounding restaurant seemed distant, as if they had been transported to a world where only the two of them existed. Ada felt her heart hammering against her chest. She hated the idea of being an object in a negotiation. But at the same time, what if that money was your chance to start over? For long seconds, she kept her eyes fixed on his, searching for some clue, some indication that this was a very dangerous game. Then, he slowly picked up the napkin in front of him, wiped his lips, and placed it on the table. "I accept," she said, without hesitation. Chica raised an eyebrow. "But on one condition," Ada told the millionaire. I will not be a silent wife. If we're going to pretend, I'm going to play this role until the end." For a moment, Cheeky just watched her. Then a discreet smile appeared on his lips. He didn't know it at the time, but this woman didn't just accept the deal. She was about to turn his world upside down. If you were Ada, would you accept this proposal or send Cheeky to find someone else? Comment below. I would accept if I would accept the challenge, or don't even think if I would ever enter into this agreement. I want to see who has the courage and who would run away from this trouble. When Cheeky accepts the challenge, he takes her to a hotel so she can spend the night. The sun hadn't even risen yet when Ada was awakened by the sound of firm knocking on the door. Her first night in a warm and comfortable environment after so long seemed like a distant dream, but reality soon pulled her back. When he opened his eyes, it took him a few seconds to remember where he was. The soft bed, clean sheets, and absolute silence were luxuries I hadn't experienced in a long time. Before he could fully process it, the door opened and an elegantly dressed woman walked in, followed by 2 assistants. His gaze was analytical, professional, and carried the expression of someone who had already dealt with all types of clients. "Good morning, Miss Ada," said the woman with a restrained smile. "My name is Naomi. Mr. Okafor hired us to prepare you for tonight. We have a lot of work to do." Ada blinked a few times, still trying to wake up completely. Prepare her. She barely had time to reflect on what would happen that day. She was still processing the fact that within a few hours she would be introduced to Bodenrin's high society as the future wife of one of the most influential men in the country. "I need a moment," he murmured, his voice still hoarse with sleep. "Of course, but be quick. Mr. Okafor instructed us not to waste time." Naomi and her assistants began unpacking suitcases full of expensive clothes and boxes, containing shoes, accessories, and beauty products. Ada felt her heart speed up. She got up and went to the bathroom, where she found a bathtub already filled with warm, scented water. The gentle vapor filled the room, and for a moment she hesitated. He touched the edge of the bathtub, feeling the heat. She entered slowly, feeling the water envelop her like a silent hug. He closed his eyes and allowed himself to relax, but that moment of peace soon dissipated with the knock on the door. "Miss, Ada, we need to start with aesthetic care," warned Naomi from the other side. Ada let out a sigh and got out of the bathtub. One of the assistants was waiting for her in a fluffy robe, while the other prepared a makeshift lounge chair in the room. She was guided there, and as soon as she sat down, the women's skilled hands began to work. Her previously tangled and lifeless hair was washed, treated and brushed, until it regained its natural shine. Her nails were manicured, her eyebrows were shaped, and her skin received layers of hydration and light but sophisticated makeup. The reflection in the mirror gradually changed. Every detail, every touch, transformed the woman Ada saw reflected a little more. But the moment that really surprised her was when Naomi opened a velvet box and pulled out a stunning dress. It was an elegant model, with fine fabric and an impeccable cut that highlighted her skin. Naomi held the dress in front of her and smiled. "Mr. Okafor chose this one, personally." Ada hesitated before picking it up. He felt the texture of the fabric between his fingers. For a brief moment, he felt a lump in his throat. How long has it been since anyone picked something out for her? She got dressed with the help of her assistants, and when she looked in the mirror again, she felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. The woman before her was no longer the beggar who wandered the streets in search of shelter and food, nor the one who slept on cardboard and carried the weight of a destroyed past in her eyes. And even though it was all a lie that she was just playing a role, at that moment, she didn't seem to be pretending. The door opened and Chike entered. He stopped immediately when he saw her. His eyes took in every detail, from the shiny strands of her hair to the way the dress hugged her curves perfectly. It was the same woman I had met the night before, but at the same time, she seemed completely different. "You," he began, but needed a moment to find the right words. "You look like a different person." Ada smiled sideways, crossing her arms. "I'm not someone else." Cheek remained silent for a moment. He was a man used to dealing with complex situations, but something about that moment left him slightly disconcerted. She was perfect for your plan, but most of all, Chika noticed something he didn't expect. Ada was perfect to challenge him, and that, more than anything, intrigued him. This story still has many surprises, so leave a like on this video so I know you're enjoying the content. Cheek took her arm and led her to the mansion, as that would be the big day. The Okafor estate was the definition of grandeur. The wrought iron gates slowly opened, revealing an immense building of marble and glass, surrounded by meticulously pruned gardens and illuminated by soft lights that highlighted every detail of the imposing architecture. The air carried a faint scent of freshly watered flowers, and the discreet sound of a fountain in the distance added to the ambience of absolute sophistication. Ada felt the weight of the moment. Everything there screamed wealth, power, and tradition. This wasn't just the Okafor house, another empire built over generations, and she was about to enter as if she had always belonged to that world. Inside, the luxury was even more opulent. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, reflecting light in thousands of sparkling prisms. Rare works of art decorated the walls, and the impeccably arranged furniture exuded elegance and tradition. Impeccably dressed servants circulated around the room, paying attention to every detail of the reception that was about to take place. At the center of it all, Chike's parents waited. Obina Okafor, a man with a stern expression and intimidating presence, kept his hands folded on the table, as if he were ready to interrogate anyone who walked through that door. At his side, Ifeoma Okafor, a woman with a critical eye and impeccable posture, studied every detail of the environment with eyes trained to identify any sign of weakness. When Chike and Ada entered the room, there was silence for a brief moment, her parents' eyes fixed on her. The surprise on their faces was evident. "Mom, Dad, this is Adaize, my future wife." Ifeoma blinked a few times, as if trying to process the information. She didn't expect her son to actually bring someone, let alone someone like this. Ada was impressive. Her beauty, her posture, and the confidence she exuded were worthy of a woman raised within high society. But Ifeoma knew her own son too well. Something wasn't right. "Future wife?" she repeated slowly, her sharp eyes analyzing Ada's every move. Ada smiled elegantly and took a small step forward. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Okafor." His tone was controlled, his posture impeccable. There was no hesitation, no signs of nervousness. Every word was carefully chosen. Every gesture was calculated to convey exactly what was needed. Obina, who until then had remained silent, leaned forward slightly. "And where do you come from, Adaize?" Chike held his breath. I knew this moment would come. But before he could intervene, Ada responded with a naturalness that surprised even him. "From Bodden-Rhin, Mr. Okafor. I worked as a lawyer for many years before I met Chike." Her eyes were fixed on Obina's, defiant, without a single flaw in the narrative she had constructed for herself. Ifeoma, who was already ready to unmask her, raised her eyebrows. "Attorney?" "Yes, ma'am." Ada nodded with a restrained smile. "Law has always been my passion. I believe that justice is a fundamental pillar of society." That answer hit Ifeoma in an unexpected way. If there was something he respected, it was intelligence and ambition, and Ada seemed to have both. Chike watched everything carefully. He should have been pleased that Ada was doing so well, but instead he felt uneasy. How could someone who lived on the streets until a few days ago manage to behave so naturally? How could she sustain that role without hesitation? He was always in control, always able to anticipate people's reactions. But with Ada, he was beginning to realize that he didn't completely control her. Dinner was served, and the conversation flowed surprisingly naturally. Ada answered each question with sharp wit, demonstrating knowledge and charm that gradually won Ifeoma over. With each well-placed answer, the matriarch's distrust diminished. But then everything changed. In the middle of dinner, when the wine glasses were already half empty and the dishes were almost clean, an abrupt noise echoed throughout the room. The door opened with force and a man rushed in. His gaze swept the room until it landed on Ada. He froze. His face paled. His eyes widened in pure shock. "Adaize," he whispered, almost voiceless. Ada's blood ran cold. She would recognize that voice anywhere. It was Emeka, the man who destroyed her life. The silence in the room was suffocating. Chike frowned and looked at Ada, who had a stiff expression but couldn't hide the flash of panic in her eyes. Ifeoma and Obina exchanged looks, noticing the tension in the air. "And who are you?" Obina questioned, his voice full of authority. Emeka was still looking at Ada, as if he were facing a ghost. Then he regained his composure and broke into a smile, but his eyes remained hard. "Forgive me for the intrusion," he said, softening his tone. "I know Miss Adaize from a long time ago. Ada felt her hands tremble under the table. She knew that moment could ruin everything. Cheek noticed his tension. He still didn't understand exactly what was happening, but one thing was clear. That man was a threat to the plan. With a firm look, he stood up. "Whatever the reason for your coming, this is not the time," said Chika, his voice full of coldness. "You're interrupting a family dinner." Emeka held his gaze for a few moments, as if he was considering whether he should say anything else. But faced with Cheek's firm stance, he only slowly nodded. "Of course, forgive me." He took one last look at Ada before turning and leaving through the same door he entered. Ada felt her shoulders relax slightly, but her heart was still beating fast. She managed to maintain the facade until the end of dinner, mechanically answering the last few questions, forcing smiles and maintaining her impeccable posture. But inside her, she knew that this was just the beginning. Emeka found her, and sooner or later, he would return to finish what he started. The atmosphere of the dinner had already changed. The discreet laughter and polite conversations disappeared, replaced by a tense silence. Ada felt the eyes on her, burning her skin as if everyone at that table was waiting for her to explain what had just happened. She clutched the napkin between her fingers, trying to control her breathing. Dinner needed to continue. She couldn't let that moment be enough to destroy everything. Cheeky couldn't take his eyes off her. His gaze, once casual, was now sharp and analytical. Something inside him already said that Ada was hiding more than she seemed, but Emeka's appearance confirmed his suspicions. Cheek remained silent until the end of dinner, maintaining the facade of an attentive fiancé, exchanging calculated glances with his mother, who still seemed enchanted with Ada. But inside, his mind was working overtime. Once they had privacy, he didn't wait a second to confront her. Who was that man for Ada? She kept her posture firm, but her heart was beating fast. Cheeky crossed his arms, staring at her. Later, away from his parents, the millionaire questioned her severely. "You didn't react like someone who just ran into an acquaintance. He looked at you as if he had seen a ghost. I want the truth. What are you hiding? I can see that you are not just a homeless person." Ada looked away, but didn't respond. Cheeky stepped forward, having no patience for games. "You fooled my mother, but you don't fool me. Who are you, Ada?" She closed her eyes for a brief moment. There was nowhere else to run. "Do you want to know the truth?" "Okay," she replied, her voice filled with deep weariness. He took a deep breath and finally revealed his story. "I was a lawyer, not just any lawyer. I had a brilliant career and impeccable reputation until Emeka came into my life. He tricked me, convinced me to sign documents that, without my knowing, handed over my assets, my company, everything I built, directly to him. When I realized, it was already too late. He disappeared and left me with debts I could never pay." She laughed humorlessly, a bitter, painful laugh. "In the blink of an eye, I went from a respected lawyer to a woman with nothing. They tried to blame me for crimes I never committed. I lost my name, my dignity, and in the end, I even lost a roof over my head." Chike didn't respond right away. He just stared at her, absorbing every word. He felt a strange tightness in his chest. Ada was not a simple street woman. She was a warrior, someone who survived a brutal blow and could still look people in the eye unflinchingly. But something inside him warned him. "I didn't know if I could trust her." The problem was that it was already too late. After the party, Chike asked her driver to take her back to the hotel. The next day, without realizing it, he couldn't get her out of his head. The image of Ada at dinner, confidently answering each question, masterfully dismantling her mother's suspicions. She was dangerous, not in the literal sense, but because it stirred something inside him that Chike wasn't used to feeling. And the worst, the situation would only get more complicated. The next morning, Chike was called in for a talk with his parents. He had already expected pressure on Ada, but nothing could have prepared him for what he heard. "The wedding needs to happen as soon as possible," Obinna announced bluntly. Cheek frowned. "What?" Ifeoma smiled with satisfaction. "Adam is perfect. She has class and poise. You chose very well. There is no reason to wait any longer." Chike swallowed. He knew he was playing a dangerous game, but he never thought his parents would push for the fast to become something so permanent. That wasn't part of the plan. He knew he shouldn't get too involved with that woman, but at that moment he wasn't sure if he could stop it. At the hotel, Ada was a little confused with everything that had happened. That night, her ex-husband, she never thought she could meet him again. At the same time, she was thinking about Chika. He had also messed with her feelings. But Ada shouldn't get involved because it would just be a contract, he thought to himself. The next morning, Cheeky drove to the hotel where Ada was staying. He had spent the night awake, mentally going over everything that had happened at dinner. Emika's unexpected presence, Ada's reaction, the story she revealed. None of that left his mind, but most of all, I needed a quick solution. Upon arriving at the hotel, he went straight to Ada's room. He didn't knock, he just opened the door unceremoniously, finding her sitting on the edge of the bed, lost in thought. "We have a new deal," he said bluntly. Ada looked up slowly, analyzing his expression. "Another deal?" She let out an ironic laugh. "And what else do you want me to pretend now?" Cheek ignored the sarcasm. He walked over to her and threw an envelope on the table next to her. "50 million for you to pretend to be my wife for a month." The room was silent. Ada looked at the envelope, then at Chica. "What if I say no? Then you won't get anything." Cheek crossed his arms. "And as I said, he will return to the streets." The coldness in his voice made Ada's stomach turn. She felt a wave of panic rising in her chest. He was serious. She stood up abruptly, feeling anger rising within her. "So that's how it is? Do you think you can buy me anyway?" Cheek didn't blink. "I think I'm offering you a way out. You can choose between that and going back to where you were before I came into your life." Ada clenched her fists. Pride screamed, but reality was cruel. She had nowhere to go. Ada turned her face away, trying to control her frustration. The argument between them became increasingly heated. Ada felt her blood boil with every word Cheek said. His coldness irritated her deeply. Cheek pressed her, challenged her, threw cutting truths at her without any trace of empathy. "You have no choice," he said firmly, looking at her closely. "If you refuse my proposal, you know very well where you will return. Do you think you can control me?" Ada retorted, her voice filled with anger. "Just because you have money, can you decide what I should do?" The two were too close. Their breathing quickened, their eyes fixed on each other, as if neither of them were willing to give in. The tension was palpable, thick, almost suffocating. Then Cheeky pulled her, roughly towards him, and kissed her. It was an impulsive gesture, full of challenge, intensity, and something else that even he couldn't explain. For a moment, Ada remained motionless, surprised by the firmness of his lips, by the heat that ran through her body in an unexpected way. His heart raced. She should move away, I should push him. But for a brief second, he felt unable to react. Anger mixed with something dangerous that made that moment even more intense. Is this really all just a game or not? What do you think? Comment for the next chapter. If this exciting story reaches 200 comments, we will have part 2, which is unmissable. You won't believe what is about to happen. I'll wait for you there.